I stepped through the old threshold of my childhood home, the familiar scent of dust and mildew mingling with the cold air of autumn. A shudder ran through me, like the echo of a long-dead memory whispering, "You shouldn't have come back." Yet here I was, dragging the weight of years on my shoulders, years spent in the shadow of ridicule, years of studying the unthinkable. The family I had once known so well stood before me in the dimly lit living room. Their expressions twisted with disbelief and curiosity, tinged with a hint of regret. "You look different," my brother said, his tone an uneasy mix of surprise and scorn. I could feel their eyes on me, scanning for the remnants of the disgrace they had so joyously mocked. No longer did I wear the garish vests of my past entomology career. The ones they'd insist were a proof of my delusional obsession. Instead, I wore dark, practical clothes, a uniform of sorts, befitting a woman who had danced on the precipice of madness and emerged changed, reborn into something they could hardly comprehend. "Different how?" I asked, trying to suppress the rush of bitterness that threatened to spill forth. Their laughter still echoed in my mind, a dark symphony of scorn when I'd shared my passion for studying supernatural pestilences. "You'll lose your mind," my mother had warned. "You're chasing ghosts, honey," my father had said, shaking his head in sorrowful amusement. I was the family disgrace, and the societal laugh track that played alongside me only grew louder, drowning out my resolve. Now I was no longer the ridiculed outcast. I had built my life upon the skeletal remains of disbelief. I had uncovered truths that would make them recoil in horror, if only they knew what I knew. "Come here, let's get a better look at you," my mother urged, her voice shaky, as though she feared the specter of my past would suddenly lash out. I approached her, an uneasy truce forming in the air between us. But it wasn't until we were seated that I began to lay bare the dark knowledge I carried. "Do you remember when I told you about the Cursed Hives?" I asked, my heart hammering in my chest. They exchanged glances, and I saw the flicker of shame. They'd laughed, sure, but I could now sense the anxiety that coiled in the pit of their stomachs, a fear that maybe I had uncovered something they were not ready to face. "I've seen them," I continued, voice low, attempting to keep the tremor at bay. "The hives that turn people into husks, hollow shells of their former selves. Those who venture too close become conduits for something that should never have seen the light of day." "Is that supposed to scare us?" My brother scoffed, but I could tell the bravado was a weak mask for the tightening in his chest. "Not scare," I corrected him softly. "Awaken." They laughed again, uneasy, unsure. But I pressed on, determined to unveil the horrors that festered beneath our feet, hidden in the soil of our hometown. The rot is real. I've documented it, and I've barely scratched the surface. Lives withered away like leaves in autumn, consumed by a hunger that no one wants to acknowledge. I could feel the air in the room shift, thickening with doubt, regret, and unspoken fear. This was the moment I had anticipated, the reckoning where the roles would finally reverse. But I hadn't expected the urgency that surged through me. "You need to understand," I said, my voice rising. "It's coming for all of us, the darkness. You can't mock what you don't understand until it's too late." For a moment, silence hung like a suspended breath. Then came the first whisper, a low guttural sound that slithered through the walls, vibrating like a pulse of the earth itself. The lights flickered and shadows crept across the floorboards. My family froze, the laughter dying in their throats, replaced by something more primal, fear. "Mom?" My brother's voice cracked, the bravado gone, stripped bare by vivid terror. I watched as the shadows sharpened, coalescing into grotesque shapes, buzzing, writhing. The manifestation of the horrors I had dared to face in my solitude. The hives were there, in spectral form, surrounded by a miasma of black smoke. I saw it, the very essence of what I had fought against for so long, trapped in a grotesque dance of destruction. "No, this isn't possible," my mother screamed, scrambling backward, clutching at my father's arm as he stared, rapt with disbelief. Yet I was no longer the frightened girl they abandoned. I had stared into the abyss and returned, marked by its darkness. "This is what I was trying to tell you," I yelled, my heart racing with a sense of vindication. "You laughed, you ridiculed me, but it's real and it's here." Their eyes reflected horror, the sickening realization that they had failed to heed my warnings. The weight of my knowledge bore down upon them now, like a shroud, too heavy to escape, and the specters of the hives closed in, hungry for acknowledgement. As they screamed, I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. I had endured the darkness, survived the relentless ridicule, and now, finally, I was vindicated by the very monsters I had studied. I stepped back, letting the shadows take their toll. I was no longer a disgrace. I was a harbinger of truth. They could see the horrors I had faced, but they could never unsee the price of their disbelief. The cursed hives had come for them, and there was no escaping the reckoning that had been long overdue. As I turned to leave, I glanced back one last time, the echo of their cries fading into the abyss behind me. I had come home to reclaim what was lost, but I was leaving with something far more profound, a warning. The world might still mock me, but I had become more than an obsession. I had become a vessel for the truth, and they would remember my name long after this night. And as I stepped back into the crisp night air, I knew the haunting was just beginning.